This is me over 5 years ago on my 1996 Harley Davidson Sportster, taking it places you should never ever take a street bike, let alone a Harley Davidson. I wasn't doing this for clicks or views or attention. I was doing this purely out of the love of riding on two wheels and taking vehicles places they were never meant to be. In order to get back on two wheels, there's only one way that it feels right to me, and that is to be resurrecting this exact motorcycle, completely transforming it and getting it ready to hit the road again. I'm really excited about this one. I've been wanting to do this for a long time, and I am finally carving out the time to do so. So come with me as we finally resurrect my first daily driver. This motorcycle project kind of came out of nowhere, but in order to understand why we jumped into this so quickly, we got to go back about a week and a half to when I found some crazy deal on some motorcycle parts. So this morning I was scrolling Facebook Marketplace like you do, and I came across a great deal on some Harley Davidson parts. It just so happens that my personal Harley Davidson needed some of these parts. So I'm getting a gas tank, an oil tank, a front and rear fender, all for $100, which is awesome. The reason that my personal Harley Davidson does not run is because the gas tank actually rusted through. So we're gonna go grab this stuff, and hopefully we'll be able to get the Sportster fixed sooner than later. So that brings us back to today, where I'm getting the Sportster so I can get to work. All right, we made it. And here we have a 96 Sportster that was my first real daily driver. I've put tens of thousands of miles on this thing. There have been many times this was my only vehicle, and sadly it's been sitting for about 3 years, maybe 3.5 years, and the gas tank rusted out, so we're gonna get this thing back on the road. Very thankful to my parents to have a place to store my motorcycle while it was broken, but in all fairness, it is my father's fault for getting me addicted to motorcycles, so it's only fair that he can store the motorcycle while it's down for a while. But we got it out. Here she is, out and about. Now we just gotta get it up onto the trailer, strapped down, and ready to go. We're dragging it back home for the final time, hopefully on a trailer for quite some time. Hopefully we can get this thing up and going again. It honestly shouldn't take much. The only reason it's down is because the previous tank rusted through. So we're down a tank. Once I got that tank, I figured it was time to get this thing on the road. All right, we got the Harley home. Now it's time to start getting it unloaded and into the garage, start figuring things out. This battery actually had a little bit of life left. Lights turn on, so that's something. That's cool. I'm gonna get the battery tender on this thing. We're gonna get it ready for its new setup. This thing has been dark red, like purplish for a while. It's about to go full purple. It was pretty red when I first got it. I put these metals on it. Now I'm gonna go put another set of metals on it. Hopefully this one will stay for a while. I don't mind this one. I actually really like the way the fender is cut. I'm actually a little bit sad about losing that. We're gonna get this thing unloaded and into the garage. Old girl's in the shop. Let's see how this goes. We got the Sportster in the garage, and it's time to get to work. Last night when we got it in, first thing I did was hook a battery tender up to it because the battery was almost dead. So now when we flick it on, the lights work and it pops over. So that's a really good start. This thing got parked about 3 years ago because of a broken throttle cable. So both of the throttle cables broke, the pull and the return. Then the throttle cables got replaced. Once the throttle cables got replaced, we put fuel in the tank. Fuel started leaking out of the tank. We've got these two fuel tanks that have been sitting on my shelf for years now. This is the one that came off of the bike. You can see on this side, we've got all of these holes. So fuel started pouring out of one of these small holes. We didn't know what was going on. I started poking at it with just a pick, and it just obliterated itself. It's Swiss cheese. There's holes all the way up here, all the way back to here. I did test a little further up, and that's about all that was rotted out. Possibly could have been replaced, but it really wouldn't have been worth it. This is the original tank off of this bike. It's a 2.2 gallon tank. This came on this bike when my father purchased it when I was a small child, and this is what was on there when I started riding it. That big old dent there is from when I crashed this motorcycle and pretty severely injured my shoulder. I was gung-ho to pull this tank back on, but these mounting brackets were taken off because my dad is custom mounting a tank onto his Sportster that he's been working on. So between the massive bash, the history with that tank, and the mounting brackets being gone, that tank is now going to be wall art. It's going to sit there for a few years to come. That brings us all the way back around to the purple tank and metal we got for our Sportster that we're going to be getting, that'll hopefully give us fuel to the carb and get this thing fired up. So for the about 2 or 3 weeks since I've got all of this sheet metal, it's been sitting here in the back of the turbo truck, and it's time to bring it in. We're going to start with just the tank. First thing first, I want to get fuel to this thing, get it fired up, and make sure we have no issues. That way this thing is mechanically sound before we're putting all the time and energy into swapping all the sheet metal over and getting it looking good again. I think she's getting fuel. We'll try reserve. I didn't put too much fuel in the tank yet. No way! Oil light went off, but let's check the oil. Wow, it just fired on up. Okay, there's oil in it. I should probably check the trans oil too. I should just do an oil flush on everything. No way. I'd say she runs. Turn the choke off. That is a proper Harley idle. I have no idea where the factory bolts that held the tank on went, but I did have these, which are just out of my bolt bin, that happen to be the right length and diameter to work. So we've got some bolts in this thing. We're gonna get it cinched down. They're not perfect. Eventually I'd like to buy some dress-up style bolts that look a little bit better, but for now this will hold the tank up off the frame, make sure it's not rubbing through anywhere. We'll be able to get a couple miles on this thing, see how everything feels, get everything up to temp, do a good flush of all of the fluids, the transmission oil and the engine oil, and overall just make sure this thing's in semi-decent shape, brakes are functioning, all the stuff like that. Then we'll be able to start putting a little bit of time and love into this thing to turn it into maybe a nicer bike. Let's get back to getting this thing ready to ride. I was just about out of gas, so I went ahead and got a couple more gallons of gas for this thing. We're gonna get this tank not fully full, but more full. Went ahead and even got premium. Treating it nice. I figured air cooled. If it gets warm, I'd rather it not ping until it detonates. I'm gonna take it for a cruise, see how it feels, and see what else needs addressed. That way when we're going down to pull it apart to fix the fenders and stuff, whether we're painting it or just putting the other fenders on, we can get everything done at once that needs attention. I don't love this gas cap style, so I'm gonna steal this one. It's a little hideaway. Nice flush look. Honestly, don't hate that. I don't know, the purple's not terrible. After a very short test drive, we have no rear brakes. And the kickstand doesn't have a spring. Those are two things that we really need to fix. So let's figure out what's going on and see if we can get this thing a little more dialed in. Also, I just noticed that puddle. Okay. All right, well, we fixed the fuel leak issue by tapping the carburetor. I think the bowl must have just gotten stuck. Now let's see if we can figure out this rear brake issue. Rear brake. Ain't nothing there. I'm gonna guess there's no fluid in here. We need .5 brake fluid, and I need to figure out how to take this off without pulling the exhaust, because that sounds like a pain, and I don't want to do that. Dry. Not dry, but definitely out of fluid. Also, I had this random clutch spring I tried to use for a kickstand spring. I need to find one that's shorter than this and stronger than this, and it should work. I don't have DOT5 brake fluid, which is what this thing takes, so I'm gonna run to the store, grab that, and see if I can find a shorter and stronger spring for the kickstand and see if we can get that thing to work. And then with rear brakes and a kickstand, we might be one step closer to actually riding this thing and seeing how it does. We're getting things ironed out one step at a time. It has been sitting for years at this point, so it was to be expected that it might need a few things. Pull the bike a little bit further in. We're gonna get it onto the stand. We're gonna jack it up, and we're gonna start working on getting this sheet metal swapped out. We have the front fender and rear fender, so we might as well do that since we're already here. Then maybe we can get some heat in the engine and swap out. We have 3 quarts of engine oil, we've got some brake fluid, and we've got RevTech chain case lube for Sportsters. So got transmission, engine, and brake fluid. So this thing should, honestly, when we're done, be a whole lot nicer. Got everything set out, and you can see where we're going with this. Front fender, the rear fender, and some trim pieces that I may or may not use. I'm not exactly sure. I don't love the chrome. I'm not a huge fan of chrome, but all in all, everything is gonna look a ton better just matched. And I'm not super sad about mixing it up and having a new color bike. Let's be real, most people pay for paint jobs. I'm just doing it because, well, I got a good deal on some sheet metal. I got all of the sheet metal cleaned up that's gonna go on it. I don't hate the color the more I look at it. It's not my favorite, but I don't hate it. So we're gonna go ahead and start from the front to the back, getting everything replaced. I'm gonna start with the front fender. We're also gonna try and clean things up as we go. With honestly way less work than I remember, we got this thing completely stripped down. This frame is bent from when I wrecked it, so this actually is super far apart compared to what it needs to be. That gap there is about how bent this frame is. Kind of see this side's a little bent out, this side's super bent out. It is what it is. So I've got a clamp on here, and right now it's just barely past, maybe 3/16 of an inch past where it needs to be in terms of going in and out. I'm actually going to continue cranking on it for just a little bit. I don't have a ton more I can go on this clamp, but I think I might max this clamp out, and then when the spring back of the metal happens, it'll be a ton closer, and hopefully it's just not so far away. I don't mind having it a little far out, but I'd like it to be easier to assemble and also not have so much tension on everything once it's assembled. Yeah, I don't think we got anything. That's unfortunate. Oh well, I tried. Really did a number to this frame when I did crash the bike. The other thing I'm gonna do while everything's apart is I got some DOT5 brake fluid. I'm gonna put some in, and we're gonna get these rear brakes bled and figure that system out, because currently there's nothing. That's not good. So we're gonna put some fluid in, see if we see any leaks anywhere, or if maybe the rear pads are just pretty worn. The rear pads do look like they're towards the end of their service life. They don't by any means look like they're metal on metal or anything, so they should have life left. I'm gonna put some fluid in there and we'll start with that. I started bleeding these rear brakes and the fluid immediately got kind of gross, so I'm gonna go ahead and clean this out really well. And I went ahead and started looking at the fluid in the front brakes, which is also pretty gross. I'm gonna drain this fluid out and we're gonna bleed front and rear brakes, get some new fluid in there, and I think that'll help with everything. Honestly, new brake fluid's never a bad idea, but I don't think the rear's ever had a brake flush, so I'm gonna go ahead, flush both, get fresh fluid through the entire brake system. And that'll be nice. It'll feel good to know the braking system's up to par. Look at that. So much cleaner. You can't see any gross grime or anything in the bottom. And the same goes for the handbrake reservoir. So much cleaner. Stoked about that. The fluid that came out of the front brakes was this color. So I don't know if that's just because the fluid I used at the time was that color or what, but there was a lot of gunk in the bottom as well. So we're gonna be putting fresh fluid in everything, bleeding both systems. Like I said, it's just one of those nice things. Brakes are essential. You want them to work. Now to bleed the rear brakes, move to the front. This is an idea of the color of fluid that's coming out of here. Brown and pretty gross. We've got the rear brakes bled, holds good pressure, caps on, should be good to go. We bled the front one until good fluid came out. That happened really fast. Gravity bleeding helped a ton. It bled super easy. Got it filled up, capped off, good to go. Brand new brake fluid in both systems. So we're about ready to start putting this thing back together. I took it apart from the front to the back. I'm actually gonna put it back together from the back to the front. We're gonna start with the rear fender, get that situated and in place. Then we'll do all these trim pieces, the horn, the tank, and then the front fender. This thing will be a fully together bike in no time. This new rear fender has the stock taillight in it. This is a stock fender, it's just cut right above the stock taillight housing. It's gonna be a little bit more of a pain to put on, but I'm going to go ahead and wire this taillight up as well as the license plate taillight I've got. More light is not bad on a motorcycle. I wanna be as visible as possible, which is one of the reasons I might even leave these reflectors. I think they look a little bit doofy, but I would rather be seen than have something stupid happen. You only get one life. Wear a helmet, try and be seen on a motorcycle. It's really not that hard. Wearing all black and having no reflectors, yes, it's a good look, but it's not a good look when you're splattered all over the road. So, is what it is. I like motorcycles. I don't like the idea of dying on a motorcycle. With the rear fender on, I want to get the factory tail light working. Currently, we've got tail and brake on this, but not here. This is hardwired in from years ago from me, so I'm going to go ahead and I'm actually going to splice in back here and hardwire this in as well because I don't have the factory plug off of the bike. We got matching colors, so that should make it easy. And that should give us tail and brake lights to our factory tail light. It's fully together, and you know, the purple is kind of growing on me. I don't hate it. Looks pretty good. One of the last things I need to do before we get this thing on the road again is this. This is a random spring. I had a clutch spring that I tried to use for the kickstand. Didn't work. So I went and got one that was shorter and a little bit tougher to pull. This is actually just a super cheap one that was on sale at Tractor Supply. We'll see if it works. Hopefully it does. That should take care of that. I checked the oil, and then I'm gonna go ahead and check tire pressure front and rear, just because it's probably a good idea considering it's been sitting for years. Other than that, we're about to hit the road in this thing, and hopefully everything feels good. We got the brakes assessed, we got it running. That is a huge portion of everything we need to do. Unfortunately, we need to set it down in order to get the kickstand figured out. So I'm gonna get it off of the lift and figure out what we're doing. All right, I think I'm gonna start by trimming this just a little bit, see if we can get it hooked in the peg a little bit better. Trim it down. Vice grips, a ton of fighting, and leaning it on the other side on the motorcycle jack. We got this hooked up, and it even seems to do things. So I think we got the kickstand situation figured out. Another one off the list. There actually is no list. I should make a list because that would make it feel better to get things crossed off the list. Take it for a cruise, get the oil warmed up, and get this thing ready to swap the oil on it, and then we'll be actually ready for the season. I would just like to address one thing right off the bat. Yes, I'm a dork that wears one of these helmets. My head's really big. It's nice to do this because I can spread it apart to get it off my big head. 2, always wear a helmet when you're on 2 wheels. It's just the way to go. I've had a helmet save my life. Let's hit the road and see how we like the bike. God, that turn sucks. We made it back home. The engine's nice and warm. I am pretty chilly because it is cold outside. Let's get this thing pulled in, drain the oil, drain the transmission oil, and get everything cleaned out and swapped over. And then this thing is a ripper. Honestly, I'm stoked. It's been a long time since I've been on a motorcycle and it felt good. We only put, what do we do? We did 10.5 miles and it was enjoyable. So I'm excited to get this thing up and going a lot more this year. Oh, let's get this maintenance knocked out so we can hit the road again. We've got it back in the garage and back in the air so we can start getting oil changed. There are 2 different kinds of oil on these things. There's transmission oil, which you drain from here, and engine oil, which you drain from this, that goes straight into the frame. This hose drains all the engine oil. So we're going to disconnect both those, get them both draining into the pan. Then we'll get the filter off and fill everything up. Should be about that simple. The metal on this drain plug is kind of intense. There's a lot of metal there. There's some like flakes, some slivers. Nothing looks terribly terrible, but there's quite a bit there. This is off the transmission. We got her all fixed up. We got new oil filter, new engine oil, new transmission oil. I'm really stoked. Should be 100% good to go now. So we're gonna go ahead, drop her down. All in all, I'm stoked. This thing is coming together. Upgrades in the near future might be nice, but for now, I'm just happy to be on 2 wheels again. It feels good. If you enjoyed this video and you want to see more motorcycle content, let me know in the comments down below what you want to see. Road trips, wrenching, new builds, anything crazy. But for now, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I sure hope to catch you on the next one.